fine.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of What's Going On. I'm your host, Tom D'Ambra. As always, we're very thankful you take the time from your busy day to view our program. We have a lot of information for you today, my friends, so I think that we should just get right to it. And I found it rather fitting. I know we read this quick quote to you last week, but with the subject matter that we are going to be speaking of today, I thought it would be very interesting to open up by reading just a small portion, again, of the document Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars, because I want you to really have an understanding that not everything that is happening, whether it be domestically, monetarily, foreign, militarily, whatever, as Franklin Delano Roosevelt said, in politics, nothing happens by chance. If it happened, you can bet it was meant to happen that way. And that's exactly what this document is about. This document was written in 1954. And I know we did, actually, I believe we did 4 shows going through this entire document and breaking down the language. But this is quite blunt. Even the average American has been educated or indoctrinated in the public fool system can read this for himself or herself and see what the end game is. And from this, we can also get an understanding how far along we are with regards to their plans. So again, this is just a small portion, a quote from Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars. A silent weapons system operates upon data obtained from a docile public but legal, but not always lawful force. When the government is able to collect tax and seize private property without justification, it is an indication that the public is ripe for surrender and is consenting to enslavement and legal encroachment. Understand, this is their endgame, and this is the mechanisms that have gone on in the public fool system, the fluoride in the water, the vaccinations, the GMO in the food, all of it. Every aspect of it, my friends, has been meant to bring the American people to this level of ignorance and literally being ripe, as they say, for surrender and consenting to enslavement and legal encroachment. Let us continue. War is therefore the balancing of the system by killing the true creditors, the public, which we have taught to exchange true value for inflated currency. That's right. And they've done very well with this. I want you to think about this. Since 1913, when the Federal Reserve, private for-profit banking corporation, Federal Reserve, took over the money system on December 23rd, 1913, while the Congress was away for the Christmas holiday, the purchasing power of that medium of exchange is down to 2% from the 100% standard that it was prior. And there's multiple reasons for this, but the two big ones are this. One, there is no intrinsic value backing our currency. In other words, my friends, there is no gold, there is no silver backing our medium of exchange. And hence, as the government and the private bank gives the insolvent corporation what you call the government permission to print these Federal Reserve notes, they are not dollars. If you've been watching this program, you have a complete understanding that a dollar is 25.8 grains of gold and a 15:1 ratio of silver, with the coinage acts that we did multiple shows on also. So there is no intrinsic value. There is no, as I call it, the gold discipline. And so being that the Treasury can just go ahead and print more and more and more and more of these notes, not dollars. What is a note? Notes are literally an acknowledgement of debt. That's why there's 2 signatories, and I know we've gone over all this with you. But basically, the more they print, the least amount of value it lessens and lessens in purchasing power. That is what's going on. The other end of this equation, my friends, is that you and your children are the co-surety to this facade debt through an instrument called the birth certificate. Think of the word certificate. If I own a business, let's say I own a Subway sandwich shop or a McDonald's or whatever, and I issue certificates, they have no value except into the case that I present the value to it as owner, I control the value of it, and I also control the time duration that this is going to be exchanged. But it has no value. It is fiat. It is made up just by decree of the owner of McDonald's or Subway Corporation. And it's the same way with the private for-profit corporation called Federal Reserve. The only difference is with that Subway or McDonald's certificate is that you're not the co-surety to the debt. With the Federal Reserve note, you and your children are the co-surety to the debt. And that's what the debt is all about, my friends, with regards to why we are in such a debt-ridden crisis in this country. And it's not just the United States, it's all of the banks, all of the countries that have central banks that are controlled by these international bankers that are in the same boat. You have to understand that. And let us continue with this. In the public, which we have taught to exchange true value, gold and silver species, for inflated currency, Federal Reserve paper, fiat, decree notes. And falling back on whatever is left of the resources of nature and regeneration of those resources. Falling back on whatever is left of those resources of nature would be what you perceive to be your property. You do not own your property. Senate Document 43, we've read this to you a lot of times. All property is in the state. The state is an insolvent corporation. The creditor is in charge and takes hold of the property of the insolvent corporation USA Inc. The creditor being the Federal Reserve, the IMF, etc. And as for regeneration of those resources, my friends, can you say your sweat equity? Let us continue. Until such energy dominance is absolutely established, the consent of the people to labor and let others handle their affairs must be taken into consideration, since failure to do so could cause the people to interfere in the final transfer of energy sources to the control of the elite. Energy sources, my friends, is your sweat equity. It is essential to recognize that at this time, public consent is still an essential key to the release of energy in the process of economic amplification. Therefore, consent as an energy release mechanism will now be considered. And they have done a very good job of that, because all of your sweat equity, my friends, is going to them. You work your tails off, but you never seem to get caught up. You never seem to get ahead of the game. Why? Multiple reasons. One, they take so much from you prior to it coming to you. Two, they've got all these alphabet agencies with their hands divvying in your pockets. Three, you are basically a sweat equity entity for these bankers, because you don't own anything. You don't own your property, and I mean any property, including your own children. Your children are bonded. You, mother, bonded them. You, as being the mother, the only person who could, in natural law, negotiate contract for this child until this child was of age to negotiate contract, you, mother, bonded your children as a co-surety to the debt of facade international money system through international bankers. So are the American people ripe for the picking, consenting, surrendering? Listen to these words. They're not talking about making a better home, a better life, a better future for our children. They're talking about you consenting, you surrendering, you being ripe for the picking. Now, how much picking has the Obama administration been doing lately? Well, I went to the office of the GAO recently, General Accounting Office, and the Obama family, are you ready for this, my friends? The Obama family has spent $44,177,123.06 on vacations since they've been president. Over $44 million. And don't forget, every one of them dollars, they're not dollars, they're Federal Reserve notes. Your children, the Insolvent USA Inc., had to go into debt to acquire this over $44 million, and now your children are the co-surety to that $44 million. So the CEO of the Insolvent Corporation USA Inc. can go on multiple vacations throughout the world. Over $44 million. And if that's not good enough for you, ripe for the picking, Mr. and Mrs. America, let's read this article. Once upon a time, Harry Truman left the White House and went home to Missouri with just the thanks of a semi-grateful nation. Today, presidents are well paid while in office and taken care of royally after they leave. President Obama sought to increase the amount of money available for the federal government to spend on former presidents in advance of his White House exit. In his budget request for fiscal years 2016 and 17, Obama proposes hikes in the appropriations for expenditures of former presidents, according to a report from the Congressional Research Survey published Wednesday. The report, which discusses the pensions of other federal benefits offered to former commanders-in-chiefs by the way of former presidents' acts, specifies that Obama's 2017 budget proposes a nearly an 18% hike in appropriations for expenditures of former presidents. He successfully requested an increase in such appropriations for fiscal year 2016. The president's 2017 budget request seeks a $3.865 million in appropriations for expenditures for former presidents, an increase of over $588,000 or 17.9% from the fiscal 2016 appropriation level. So I want you to understand this, that in 1 year, the presidents, former presidents, who have all led us down the same road, all the living ones now. The last one who tried to fight it was Ronald Reagan. The one who really tried to stop it was JFK. Look what happened to him. I want you to understand that Obama gave all the former presidents a 17.9% pay raise. After all, he can do this, right? He's got a pen and a phone. Remember that? That's what legislation process has come down to in this country. Obama has a pen and a phone. Very, very interesting that we find ourselves in this situation that here we are, we're a failing economy, we're up to our ears in debt. We have more debt than we do a gross domestic product, but yet the head CEO of USA Inc., Insolvent Corporation, decides to give himself and all his other crony partners a 17.9% pay raise in 1 year. Rather amazing. What did the American people do about it? They rolled over and went back to sleep. Nothing. And this is why we are where we are, because as a people, we do nothing. We've had plenty of warnings, my friends. And I know in the beginning of this program, some 7 years ago, we did a lot of statements from the congressional record and so forth about people on both sides of the battle, the ones that were going to benefit, the ones that were going to be in a demise, literally, about this Federal Reserve, and I thought it would be a good time before we get into some other things, basically, to review some of these statements real briefly, so you'd have an understanding of nothing's changed. The only thing that's changed is they've dumbed down the American people. They've made us a much more ill society. They have devalued the purchasing power of the medium of exchange that you call a dollar, which we know is not a dollar. It's a Federal Reserve note. And I want you to listen to some of these statements and think in yourself, boy, were these guys right? The picture you're seeing on your screen right now is a very courageous man. His name was Louis T. McFadden. He was a representative from the state of Pennsylvania. He was chairman of the Banking and Currency Committee back when the Federal Reserve took over, the private bank Federal Reserve took over the nation's monetary system. We don't have money anymore, my friends. Black's Law Dictionary, money does not encompass debt. What is a note? Again, acknowledgement of debt. But Louis T. McFadden, and I know we got into this many years ago, Louis T. McFadden was actually murdered. And yes, unlike the Supreme Court Justice Scalia, there was actually an autopsy done. Louis T. McFadden was poisoned to death, and this was their second attempt at doing this. And I want to read to you some of his quotes. Now, understand, this man is the chairman of the Banking and Currency Committee when the Federal Reserve took over the monetary system. Listen to his warnings to you. This is 100 years ago, my friends. Look at this man. Understand what he's telling you. We have in this country one of the most corrupt institutions the world has ever known. I refer to the Federal Reserve Bank. This evil institution has impoverished the people of the United States and has practically bankrupted our government. It has done this through the corrupt practices of the moneyed vultures who control it. Now, that statement, my friends, was in 1932. And listen to his words, has practically bankrupted our government, 1932. What happened on March 9th, 1933? That's right. We did go bankrupt. And this is why you do not own anything. This is why the purchasing power has been reduced to 2% as to when they took the purchasing power over, the issuings. We all know that Article 1, Section 8 says only the Congress has the ability to issue and control the value thereof of the currency, which would be in species of gold and silver only. Louis T. McFadden was trying to warn you. The Federal Reserve banks are one of the most corrupt institutions the world has ever seen. There is not a man within the sound of my voice who does not know that this nation is run by international bankers. Congressman Louis T. McFadden, 1916. Most people think the Federal Reserve banks are the United States government institutions. They are not government institutions. They are private credit monopolies which prey upon the people of these United States for the benefit of themselves and their foreign swindlers. Louis T. McFadden, Congressional Record 12595-12603. This man, my friends, tried very, very hard to warn the American people. He risked life and limb, and unfortunately, he lost his life trying to educate the American people of what was going on. And now understand, you cannot just disregard a man who, his warnings, his dialogue, his language. Swindlers. You just can't say this guy didn't know what he was talking about because he was the chairman of the committee who was responsible, the overseer of all this. You have got to take heed to this man's warnings. You know, and then we have some literally 60 years later, Barry Goldwater. Most Americans have no real understanding of the operation of the international moneylenders. The accounts of the Federal Reserve System have never been audited. It operates outside the control of Congress and manipulates the credit of the United States. And my friends, it's 2016, and this corporation has still never been audited. So who's in control? I want to make sure, there's so many quotes here. Of course, this is a great one. I know we've read this to you very, very often throughout the time of this program. A great industrial nation is controlled by its system of credit. Our system of credit is concentrated in the hands of a few men. We have come to be one of the worst ruled, one of the most completely controlled and dominated governments in all the world. No longer a government of free opinion, no longer a government by conviction and vote of the majority, but a government of the opinion and duress of small groups of dominant men. That was President Woodrow Wilson. And you think he would know? He signed the Federal Reserve Act. You don't believe me that the Federal Reserve is still not a United States government entity? The Federal Reserve banks are not federal instruments at all. Lewis versus United States Ninth Circuit Court, 1992. The Federal Reserve buys banks government bonds without one penny. Congressman Wright Patman. We could get into this, my friends, but I got to stay on track. It's just incredible. These warnings have been here, and we have really, there's been so many who have tried to warn the American people about, and this was in the beginning of it. And look what's taken place since these bankers have controlled the issuance of the currency. And you know, folks, it's just like Amschel Rothschild said, give me control of a nation's currency. I care not who makes its laws. Well, the reason is because, you know what? You are paying everybody. Harry Reid, Hillary Clinton. I mean, look at Harry Reid, what was going on with the BLM out in Nevada. Is Harry Reid in prison? No. Harry Reid's not in prison for all the laws he broke. Who's in prison? The 68 people who supported Cliven Bundy. They're in prison. Is Hillary Clinton going to be indicted for all the magnitude of laws that she broke just with what's called the email scandal? Never mind all the murders. Never mind all the corruption, just the email scandal. You think they're going to indict her? Absolutely not. Why? Because she's one of them. She's protected. You're not. It's the just us system, my friends, and you're not part of it. Lavoy Finney was murdered, cold blood murdered, hands up. I asked you to go on the internet and watch that, and I hope you did. We are trying to get permission to view this with you, but we have not gained that permission yet, hence we cannot show it to you yet. But it's out there. Punch it in on the internet and go get it. Are any of them people going to be indicted? Absolutely not. What happened to Ron Hideyoshi when he was the FBI sniper who shot up the Weaver family? Particularly Sarah Weaver, Vicki Weaver, while she was holding Sarah, who was just a child, an infant. What happened to him? Did he get indicted? Absolutely not. He got promoted. It's the just us system, my friends, and you're not it. It's like, we're going to get into that in a little bit. It's like a certain person who you know who made the quote about why they don't want Donald Trump. All right. The gentleman you see now, Charles Lindbergh Sr. This gentleman also tried to warn the American people. By the way, this is the father of the famous aviator, Charles Lindbergh Jr. But let's listen he was a senator, and let's listen to his quotes. This act, the Federal Reserve Act of December 23rd, 1913, establishes the most gigantic trust on earth. When the president signs this bill, listen to these words, the invincible government of the monetary power will be legalized. Not lawful, legalized. And this invincible government. So he's telling you, my friends, that these so-called representatives, the non-representatives, non-representing representatives as I call them, they're not taking orders from you. They really don't care what you think. Harry Reid doesn't care what you think, Hillary Clinton, none of them. I can't find one of them up there that does. They're taking their marching orders from these international bankers. The invincible government of the monetary power will be legalized. The people may not know it immediately, but the day of reckoning is only years removed. Well, my friends, that day of reckoning is here. It's here now. You own nothing. Your children are bonded. You have no money for a monetary system. Your medium of exchange is a debt instrument. You have been declared the enemy through the 1933 Training with the Enemies Act from this government. The day of reckoning is only a few years removed. The trust will soon realize that they have gone too far, even for their own good. The people must make a declaration of independence to relieve themselves from this monetary power. This they will be able to do by taking control of Congress. Ha, ha, ha. Maybe back in the day, we might have had a chance of that. We still have a chance, but we need to get off our feet. We need to get up there and get active. We need to educate our fellow man, particularly our law enforcement. Wall Streeters could not cheat us if you senators and representatives did not make a humbug of Congress. The greatest crime of Congress is its currency system. The worst legislative crime of the ages is perpetrated by this banking bill. The caucus and the party bosses have again operated and prevented the people from getting the benefit of their own government. The new law will create inflation whenever the trusts want inflation. They can unload the stocks of the people at high prices during the excitement and then bring on a panic and buy them at low prices. The day of reckoning is years removed. A radical is one who may speak truth. This act establishes again the most gigantic trust on earth. When the president signs this act, the invincible government of the money power, proven to exist by the monetary trust investigation, and my friend Louis T. McFadden was part of that, will be legalized. The new law will create inflation whenever the trust wants inflation. From now on, depressions will be scientifically created. Charles Lindbergh, Sr. So, are the American people ripe for picking? I think that answer is quite evident. The American people are beyond ripe for picking. The American people have been picked. The American people are beyond ripe for picking. The American people live in fear. Just mention 3 letters from the alphabet, IRS, and I'll tell you what, everybody starts quivering in fear. And I misspoke, because the IRS is not a government agency, as we have read to you from 2 separate court documents over the years. The IRS is a sub-company of the parent company, Federal Reserve Bank. Okay. So they have destroyed the economy, giving themselves 18% pay raises, $44 million worth of vacations. So what's next? Historically, my friends, what they have always done is, first of all, they got to maintain control. Now, the thing about Mr. Trump, as Newt Gingrich said, and we're going to get into that statement in a minute, is that they can't control Donald Trump. At least that's the perception that's out there. Donald Trump, I was listening to Roger Stone the other night, and if you don't know who Roger Stone is, he is a aide-de-camp, if you will, and close friend of Donald Trump. And I went on the internet and I looked at some old interviews with Donald Trump. One of them was from, it's a black woman. Oprah? Oprah is her name. But I do not watch regular TV. Winfrey, Oprah Winfrey. And Oprah Winfrey actually had done an interview with Donald Trump. And I'll tell you something, go on the internet and watch that, because this interview was 15, 20 years old, and Donald Trump was talking about 15, 20 years in the future, what's going on. And he was so articulate about the problems that Miss Winfrey asked him, would you run for president? And he said no at the time. He didn't have interest in it, but his mind has obviously changed. He spoke quite eloquently about the powers to be. And when they can't control someone, my friends, what do? What did they do to Ron Paul? They robbed him of 2012 of Iowa and other states. And actually the Iowa investigators actually come out and said, yeah, this was corruption. They protect their people too. Look at Hillary Clinton. I mean, we can go back to the deaths of the children and the drug running of Mena, Arkansas, to Vince Foster, to the Rose Law Firm. I mean, folks, I could sit here and do five shows on the crimes of Hillary Clinton, up to the email scandal. Is she going to be indicted? Absolutely not. She's protected because they control her. She is one of their puppets that you're allowed to see on the stage, you see. But the gentleman, Mr. Trump, they can't buy him. He's worth $10 billion, bravo. And he's speaking, people say, well, he's not presidential. Well, I say, great, because I've had enough of presidential. Look where it's got us. He can speak articulately, my friends, but he understands he is speaking to a dumbed-down American populace. You've got to understand this. Watch that interview. He's very articulate 20 years ago. But he's speaking to a very dumbed-down populace. People who have no understanding of the mechanisms of the invincible government, as Charles Lindbergh Sr. called it. And also people who have been, most of them publicly, in the public fool system, have no mastery of their own native language. He understands who he's speaking to. He has to speak at a lower level because that's where they have placed us. Do you remember when we did that program, the 4 programs on secret weapons for quiet wars, and they said, this was written in 1954, they took over the public fool system in 64, which has just degraded itself since then. Do you remember when they said we must take the average reading capabilities of the graduating high school students to a 6th grade reading level? I say they did a wonderful job, because you want to know where the reading level is of the average American high school student right now? Actually, this is 6 years old, 7 years old. It was 4th grade then. In other words, from 1964 to 2011, when you a senior graduating high school in 2011 compared to 1964 had a 4th grade reading level. So Mr. Trump has to speak downward, if you would. If he starts speaking eloquently, the average American is not going to have a clue of understanding of what he's speaking of. Now, interestingly enough, this gentleman knows all about the inside game in the invincible government and the powers to be in the monetary system. Newt Gingrich, former Speaker of the House, part of the big Republican revolution and all, he made an interesting public comment. And Donald Trump why the Republican establishment did not want him. Now, I want you to think about this. You would think that the Republican Party, the establishment, would be elated that they have a candidate with such a swell of support in all the political demographics of the population. You think they would be elated. No, they're not. As a matter of fact, they are spending so far $500 million in candidates against him. That's right, folks. $500 million has been spent by George Soros and many others and the Republican establishment to defeat Donald J. Trump. Why is this? Well, I am going to sum this up for you with the quote from this gentleman right here. Newt Gingrich was asked, why is it the Republican establishment is fighting Trump to such a degree? They're pulling out everything they can, including all the dirty pool they can get their hands on. And Newt Gingrich just matter-of-factly said, well, Donald Trump is not part of the secret society. He has never taken the initiation process, and they cannot control him. And that is verbatim. So you have a guy who was Speaker of the House who obviously has sworn allegiance to the secret society, has gone through the initiation process, and who was controlled by these bankers. And I know secret societies are all like black helicopters. Well, I'll tell you what, my friends, I've had more black helicopters I've seen in the last 10 years, so don't tell me there's no black helicopters. Go on the internet, there's thousands of pictures of them. But think of that. You got a guy who's a former Speaker of the House, top-notch in the Republican Party, telling you that Trump is independent of all of their invincible government strings. He's never been part of the secret society. He's never gone through the initiation process. Therefore, they cannot control him. What does that tell you? That basically tells you, my friends, that every single president that you have seen pretty much in your lifetime has been part of the secret society, has taken the initiation process, and has been controlled. That's why I keep telling you, there is no difference between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party at the federal level. They are the same entity. They have been taking us down the same road to globalism and dominance and abject poverty all your life. Really think of it, folks. Name a president who's made a difference in your lifetime. Eisenhower was president when I was born. He warned the American people in his farewell address, and we've read that to you. Kennedy really tried. Kennedy didn't want to go to Vietnam. Kennedy did his, what they call secret society speech to the National Press Club, trying to get the press of the nation to help him educate the American people about the invincible government. That was part of the quote we read to you last week. The big one, Executive Order 11110, when he went to do away with the Federal Reserve and have the government take over constitutional money, and he actually went and printed silver certificates so we could get that into circulation so the American people would not be burdened with a fiat currency based on debt and an interest bond due on that debt. So Mr. Trump, why is he gaining such popularity? Well, I believe it's because the American people are starting to ask questions. The American people are not liking the answers. And I don't mean all of them. I'm talking, I'll tell you what, folks, if we got 3% of you out there thinking, you know what, we're ahead of the game. Maybe the American people are starting to look in their pocketbook and see what's missing. Maybe the American people are starting to think about getting off the couch. Maybe the American people have come to the understanding that the government is not looking out for the benefit. It is not a benevolent organization looking out for the betterment of its people. The American government is nothing more than an insolvent corporation. USA Inc. is March 9th, 1933, as Louis T. McFadden warned us in 1932, is insolvent, answering to international bankers. So where do they take us? Where do they take us when all economies fail? They take us to war. The gentleman you're seeing right now, his name is Albert Pike. And what I'm about to read to you comes from a letter that he wrote. The year was, believe it or not, was 1871. And when he wrote this, he actually wrote, I don't have the time for all of it, but he wrote about how they were going to format and plan 3 world wars. And the Third World War would be the culmination crisis, as he calls it in his book, to where the world government would be established and basically the satanic religion would be the rule of the day, because the 2 prominent religions of the world will fight to exhaustion against each other. This is 1871. And when you read the first 2 world wars, it's exactly how it was. And I'll be real quick here. The First World, and I want to break this down. The First World War must be brought about in order to permit the Illuminati to overthrow the power of the Tsars in Russia and make the country a fortress of atheistic communism. Did that happen? Absolutely. Who financed that movement? We did. The international bankers out of London and New York financed the Bolshevik Revolution, financed Stalin. And I can't get into the whole thing, but they talk about, let me just do this real quick. The divergence caused by the agents of the Illuminati between the British and Germanic empires will be used to foment this war. At the end, communism will be built and used to destroy the other governments in order to weaken the Christian religion and other religions. Did that happen? Absolutely. The Second World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences between the fascists and the political Zionists. This war must be brought about so that Nazism is destroyed and that the political Zionism be strong enough to institute a sovereign state of Israel in Palestine. During the Second World War, international communism must become strong enough in order to balance Christendom, which would be then restrained and held in check until the time when we would need it for the final social catechism. Did that happen? Absolutely. That's 1871. So where are they taking us now? Where are they taking us now? They are taking us to war, and the Third World War will come to America. Listen to these words. The Third World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences caused by the agents of the Illuminati between the political Zionists and the leaders of the Islamic world. Now, you wonder why the United States and all these other leaders, Merkel in Germany and so forth, are putting all of these radical, militant Islamic soldiers that aren't in disciplined uniform into this country and in throughout Europe. Why the United States? Why Europe? Because that is the base of Christendom. Bismarck spoke about this, how Christendom was in peril, and that was in the 1920s. Folks, we're back to Roosevelt's statement. Nothing happens in politics by chance. If it happened, you can bet it was meant to happen that way. Putin is promoting Christendom, and the rest of the Western world is throwing it to the fire. I watched a very interesting video of head CEO of the Insolvent USA, Barry Soetoro, last night. And I wish I could play this to you, but he actually said there may be hope for a president, for a Obama third term, because it seems the American people do not mind a socialist and pot smoker being in the Oval Office. I don't care about the pot smoking. I'm not condoning drugs. No one ever improved themselves by doing drugs. But a socialist. Hell, we got a socialist running for the Democratic Party, and I'll tell you right now, nomination, and I'll tell you right now, if he hadn't fought the bankers the way he did, and I'm talking about Bernie Sanders, signing on with Ron Paul and the Glass-Steagall Act, trying to get the Glass-Steagall Act and all that, try to audit the Fed. If it wasn't for that, they'd put him right in. They'd place him right in there with Hillary. That's why they're playing the dirty pool against Mr. Sanders. But think of what's going on, folks. This is 1871. In 1871, Albert Pike was talking about communism. Albert Pike was talking about Christendom. Albert Pike was talking about the Nazis, the party that didn't even exist until 1933. Again, financed by international bankers, particularly Brown Brothers Harriman Union Bank out of New York, who was the fund manager between the Reich Bank of Germany and the Brown Brothers Harriman Bank in New York. That's right, Prescott Bush, the grandfather of George W. Bush. And we've read that to you verbatim. Let us continue. The war must be conducted in such a way that Islam and the political Zionist mutually destroy each other. Meanwhile, the other nations, once more divided on this issue, will be constrained to fight to the point of complete physical, moral, spiritual, and economical exhaustion. We shall unleash the nihilist and the atheist. What is a nihilist? What is a nihilist, my friends? Because he's telling you in 1871 what they're going to do. They are going to unleash the nihilist. This is the biggest supporter of the nihilist organizations in this country. Black Lives Matters, MoveOn.org. This man, George Soros, is the biggest. He takes his direct marching orders from the Rothschilds. He's a big player, guys. He's up there with Heinz Kissinger. Oh, I'm sorry, you know him as Henry. So a nihilist, my friends, is an agent provocateur, one who creates chaos. What is the slogan of the New World Order? Order from chaos. We will release the nihilist and the atheist. And this man, George Soros, is the founder, and not the founder, but the funder of the nihilist. He has many organizations out there, domestically and foreignly, that are part of this. George Soros, my friends, is an enemy to the welfare, to the future of your children. He is protected. Let us continue. We will unleash the nihilists and the atheists, and we shall provoke a formidable social cataclysm which in all its horror will show clearly to the nations the effect of absolute atheism, origin of savagery, and of the most bloody turmoil. Then everywhere, the citizens, obliged to defend themselves against the world minority of revolutionaries, will exterminate those destroyers of civilization and the multitude disillusioned with Christianity, whose deistic spirit will from that moment be without compass or direction, be without compass, have no guidance. You understand? Have no guidance. Because they have taken God out of the equation. They will be anxious for an ideal, but without knowing where to render its adoration, will receive the true light through the universal manifestation of the pure doctrine of Lucifer, brought finally out in the public view. This manifestation will result from the general reactionary movement, which will follow the complete destruction of Christianity and atheism, both conquered and exterminated at the same time. And this man, my friends, that you're seeing on the screen is a major, major player of this. All you black people out there burning your neighborhoods, shooting cops while they're filling up their cars at gas stations. All the Muslims and Islam that are revolutionary Islamics that are coming into this country without any vetting process, but Donald Trump is a racist because he wants to have a vetting process before we allow them into the border. We have this big terrorist threat, but the border's wide open. But you and I, we have to be prodded, inspected, and assessed before we can travel in our own country. All planned in 1871. So where are we, my friends? We're at the end game. You get it? They took it to World War I. Nobody wanted to go to World War I and get a, Wilson got elected through staying out of the affairs of Europe. What happened? They sunk the Lusitania, set it right up for a prime time. Everybody went to World War I. We knew the Japanese, and we knew about the Lusitania, folks. That was cannon fodder. We knew about the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. We did a whole show on that, how we cracked the Purple Code 6 months prior. Knew where the fleets, when they were leaving, Hiroshima, Tokyo, their rendezvous point, all of it. What happened? Pearl Harbor happened on a Sunday. Monday morning, millions signed up to go to war for World War II. Well, now, my friends, the Third World War is coming here. The agent provocateurs of the Illuminati are in your backyard now. And this insolvent corporation, taking its orders from these international bankers who are following Albert Pike's plan to the letter, are about to bring World War III here. Your children will not have to read of this war, my friends, to learn of it. And you better prepare, because this is not far away. The culmination crisis is here. The economies of the Western world, everyone who's got a central banker has been bled. There is nothing left. The only thing left for these people to take from you are your pensions, and they are nibbling at that. Central Falls, Rhode Island, Detroit, Michigan, have all gone to court to confiscate and literally lien the pensions of their employees, and the courts have said they have every right to do that. And you want to know why? Because you don't own that. You are merely a beneficiary of that pension. You are not owner. My friends, prepare. We always close in asking you to seek truth, to obtain knowledge, to manifest kindness to your fellow man. And we always close in reminding you that your government is your responsibility. And we must learn, and we must prepare, and we must educate, particularly law enforcement in this country, because law enforcement in this country, and we've seen it, from the murders of the children and women and children at Waco, all the way straight through to the murder of Lavoy Finnecane. There are some bad apples in the basket in law enforcement, but they are not all bad. And I will tell you, probably 90% of them wear that badge so they can protect you and your freedoms and your rights. But they may not know what's going on. It's up to us to educate them. As always, we are very thankful you take the time from your busy day to view our program.
Read between the lines. Got to read between the lines. Well, the truth is very simple, very hard to find.